The EU hydrogen dream is stalling, not only because of technology, but also because of our own rules. Today I am here to tell you how and why we need to fix renewable hydrogen rules soon. When the EU revealed its hydrogen strategy, the numbers looked ambitious. Cheap electrolyzers and fast ramp-up of electrolyzers capacity. Fast forward to 2025. The electrolyzers are 5 times more expensive than initially thought, and electricity is getting more expensive due to system costs rising. Behind my back you can see an electrolyzer system, a machine which produces hydrogen and oxygen from water when electricity is applied. The European Union has chosen this technology as the main option for decarbonization of hydrogen production.
European Union hydrogen strategy based its targets of 40 gigawatt of installed capacity by 2030 on assumptions of much lower cost of renewable hydrogen. The most underestimated aspect proved to be the cost of electrolyzers alone, which was back then estimated around €600 per kilowatt of installed capacity. Studies from Agora, Energiewende, Lazard or International Energy Agency were usually claiming prices of electrolyzers ranging from €600 to €2,400 per kilowatt. But the reality, when considering real system cost in Europe, reveal prices which exceed €3,000. Why? Well, electrolyzers are complex chemical plants consisting of various components such as gas dryer, water purification, cooling systems, piping, compressors, or stacks. But the issue was that many studies mistakenly excluded costs of those components. If you consider the price of CapEx, which is around €3,000 per kilowatt of installed capacity, CapEx alone makes up to €5 per kilogram of hydrogen produced. That is when electrolyzers cannot be fully utilized.
You might be asking yourselves, why can't electrolyzers run on full load, similar to many industrial installations? Well, it's the electricity. European Union has made it clear, you can produce renewable hydrogen, but only from a renewable electricity. In 2023, European Union set out a maze of complicated rules.
Renewable hydrogen can only be produced from electrolysis. You have to build electrolyzer in bidding zone where 90% of electricity is from renewable energy sources to run it for 90% of time fully. Or in other bidding zone, you must comply with complicated rules. In the latter case, you can either take electricity directly from renewable energy source or sign a so-called power purchase agreement, we call it PPA, and use grid for sourcing that electricity, but only under certain conditions. The basic idea was for rules to limit the use of renewable energy sources in a manner which should in theory make production of hydrogen more climate friendly. But how, you may ask yourself? The additionality rule says that an electrolyzer can only use electricity from renewable energy sources that were commissioned no later than 36 months before the electrolyzer itself was commissioned. Additionality rule was crafted out of fear that cheap electrolyzers would soak up all electricity, which should be reserved for more efficient uses, such as heat pumps or electrification of transport. The temporal correlation rules require to match production of hydrogen with production of renewable energy sources. Temporal correlation should safeguard the electrolyzers from using fossil electricity when it is not available, while virtually claiming such electricity as renewable. Simply imagine using solar electricity at night. The geographical correlation requires electrolyzer and renewable energy source to be in the same bidding zone, which is a geographical zone where one can freely trade electricity without capacity constraints. Geographical correlation should in theory prevent grid constraints between countries.
Those rules may look good on paper, but in reality they act as brakes, slowing scale-up, inflating costs, and making Europe less competitive.
Additionality not only requires using new renewable energy sources, but also restricts use of subsidized sources, especially when sourcing electricity via PPAs. However, in many regions, renewable energy sources are mostly not being built without public support, such as in Czechia or Germany. This fact is especially relevant for wind farms, which are crucial for hydrogen production. In windy countries, coupling solar and wind electricity can give you utilization of around 50%. Given producer of hydrogen can only use new unsubsidized renewable energy source, the amount of available electricity dwindles. And we know how market works when there is lack of something. However, this only applies for PPAs. If renewable energy sources are connected directly to electrolyzer via a direct line, such source can be subsidized. Temporal correlation is envisaged to work on a monthly basis until 2030 and then on hourly after that year. The rule means you can't decouple physical electricity production from virtual and produce certified renewable hydrogen, for example in winter, from electricity from summer. But from 2030 on, hourly correlation means electrolyzers will have to be coupled with either batteries, more hydrogen storage, or producers will have to overcontract renewable energy sources via PPAs. In most cases, 2 to 3 times the amount when compared to monthly correlation to preserve similar utilization of electrolyzer. This of course adds cost. Some academic and business estimates hint at up to €3 costlier renewable hydrogen will be produced from 2030 on. Electrolyzers are also not as flexible as initially thought. They can be swiftly switched off or on due to safety and degradation issues. Geographical correlation locks hydrogen producers within one bidding zone. This rule is problematic, especially for landlocked countries such as Czechia, with limited amount of renewable energy sources. You may ask yourself, this may not be such an issue if we can build hydrogen pipelines and pipe hydrogen from countries with better conditions. But the issue is that the pipelines won't be available by 2030, as indicated by recent news. And in 2030, each EU member state have to comply with obligations in replacing grey hydrogen with renewable in industry and transport, imposed by Renewable Energy Directive.
When considering high electrolyzer system prices, coupled with challenging rules to comply with, the renewable hydrogen price often exceeds €12 per kilogram in many countries. And in other EU countries where the prices are lower, off-takers are still not willing to pay for that hydrogen, even when threatened by penalties imposed in industry and in transportation sector. The price of grey hydrogen is around €3 per kilogram. The European Commission is still hesitant to amend the rules, which were being crafted for quite some time. Yet, regulating something out of fear may not be the best approach, especially for countries which are leading in those technologies, at least for now.
What we need is a targeted revision, not a revolution, but evolution, and giving more time for this nascent sector to mature. Our first step must be for Commission to accelerate review of the renewable hydrogen rules in the middle of 2026, at the latest. From that review, a list of targeted amendments should be published and consulted. First, we need to delay additionality kicking in and abolish that no renewable energy source should be subsidized. In a world where electrolyzers are not as cheap as originally thought, there is no worry about hundreds of gigawatts of electrolyzers being built, sucking up all electricity dedicated for more efficient uses. Second, we must maintain monthly correlation to ease the burden on electricity sourcing side. Third, we must allow claiming electricity from the grid when prices hit below €20 per megawatt hour as fully renewable electricity without any additional rules. This would allow electrolyzers to source electricity in a more system-friendly way when there is an abundance of cheap renewable electricity, which tend to draw prices down. Fourth, we must allow sourcing of renewable energy sources from at least interconnected bidding zones. Simply put, to help landlocked countries tap into bigger potential, bigger markets. No country has similar conditions, and this is especially important without fully developed hydrogen pipeline system.
Even with these amendments, the costs of renewable hydrogen would not drop to levels of grey. Yet it may help to keep the costs a little down while preserving regulatory clarity. That is why time to act is now.